Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Need to Nerd podcast. I'm your Spencer. I'm joined, just like every week, by my co-host, Wes Singleton, a man who is so good at not spoiling TV shows. I directly asked you straight up questions about things, like maybe 5 questions after one single episode of Digimon Try. I was like, where's this? What's this? What, like, why is this happening? What's happening here? And you just straight up gave me nothing. All of it coming to throughout the show. I'm very impressed.
If I can answer a kid's multiplication questions without spoiling calculus, I can do that.
I don't get it. But I am very, very impressed. We are not here to talk about Digimon Try as much as West would like to. Maybe we'll do that.
I'm more prepped for what we're talking about today, so I'm okay with that we're talking about this.
Say, West will come to me in like 3 weeks. He'll be like, dude, I rewatched Digimon Try. Let's do it. But we are talking about Korra Book 3 Change today. It's been a while since we talked about Korra, and we've got a couple of series kind of going on of seasons that we're watching. We'll be doing The Good Place here in a bit. We're actually going to have a guest on next week, so we'll probably do The Good Place after that, as we kind of prepare for the end of The Good Place, so to speak. Did you finish? You finished it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Did you cry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just finished season 4 again, and I was
also. If there's any reason to be watching Need to Nerd, it's that we've never listened to two grown men talk about how often they cried watching things.
I am just a crier anyway.
Yeah.
Before we get too far into this, we just want to mention our Discord. The Popper podcast on the Constructive Criticism Network is popping off again. We have a new podcast coming. We have tons of contests going on there for MTG. As well as people talking about The Mandalorian in there for Star Wars. People talking about anime. I know Scotty is in the Discord. Scotty is one of our Discord members. He actually has his own anime podcast that he posts in there regularly. So if you have something that in nerd culture that you want to talk about, we want you to talk about it with us. So heading over to that Discord, it is a place to be doing that kind of stuff. With that being said, though, don't forget to check out over our Patreon at patreon.com/EasyGameMedia. I did get laid off from my job, so, if you're our first patron, you mean a lot to me, but I actually don't want that this month. This month, if you were going to be a patron, I would instead like you to donate to the Jed Foundation. And I will leave a link in the show notes. Tomorrow is the anniversary of my best friend and cousin committing suicide. And, it's always kind of a hard week for me in life. It is a week where, I constantly question, how I could have been better for probably the most important person in my life, for most of my life. And, if anything that West and I do makes your life a little bit better to the point where, you thought about becoming a patron or, sorry, I'm crying, or anything like that. The Jed Foundation is an awesome place that specifically targets teens. Wes and I, for those who don't know, live in Utah, which has the highest rate in youth suicide in the country. And so, youth suicide is a pretty big deal to me. And yeah, if anything that we say this month would cause you to be a patron, please donate to that charity instead. I didn't ask Wes before I said this, so
we are determined to
tell people not to give us money.
Never have a patron, and that you hopefully will donate to charities.
It's so funny. It feels like every month we are like, instead of giving us money, please do this instead. But I do this because it's fun with you, West. Mm-hmm. And this, it was funny. Somebody asked me what I wanted for Christmas this year, and I sent them a link to this charity. I was just like, I just want you to donate to this in my name. That's what I want. And they were like,
I thought you were going to say 3 new podcasts, because that's really what it feels like.
No. It was so funny. Somebody sent me a link to something. I won't say what it was, but somebody was like, hey, are you interested in doing this podcast? And I was like, no, I am doing Arena Mythicast, and I am doing Need to Nerd, and that is it. Those are my podcasts that I will do.
That's where I'm at with D&D games at this point.
Yeah.
I have 4. It's a lot.
And the thing is like, I want to give time to help produce things like Common Knowledge and, Homeward Path and an unnamed project that I'm working on right now that I can't announce yet. Like, there are other things that I'm helping with that I want to dedicate time to as a producer, because producing podcasts is fun for me, but I only kind of want to host 2. But if you like the things that I host, please donate to the Jed Foundation. Like seriously, I think that it is... I get really sad when I think of the idea that somebody doesn't believe somebody's there for them. And I did this once on constructive criticism on Caleb's death anniversary, and I'm going to do it here. If you are ever too sad, if you're like nobody cares about you, just give me a text. My number is 385-253-1148. Yeah, I just said that on the internet. I don't care. I'll be there for you. You're not alone. Like, I personally have posted my story about my struggle with suicide just in the last month. So know that you're not alone, and yeah, I'm gonna. You should talk before I cry. Okay. Or we can change the subject if you want.
Yeah. And for those of you for whom your own struggle is not your active challenge, just be there for the people around you. Reaching out without, it's hard. We all live in a world where no one really wants to receive a phone call or a text message that they weren't anticipating. But at the same time, it can make the difference. During these times of COVID, we're all feeling alone. We're all feeling isolated. And doing the things to reach out to your friends, to your loved ones, is going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I would say that 2020 and COVID has been a year of change. And what?
Is this a segue? A segue?
Yeah. It's why do my co-hosts always do this? No matter what podcast I'm doing, I have a great segue and they call it out. Is that a co-host's job to call out?
Because I think it's because we're all just as surprised that it's happening as the listeners are.
It's so ridiculous. You just ruin it. Y'all ruin it. You, Matt, Michael, basically all of you. You just can't help. You're just like, oh.
Raise your hand at home if you know what the segue was going to be.
All right. So this week we are talking about Legend of Korra Book 3 Change. And for those who don't remember, I didn't like Season 2. To the point where I was like, telling Devonair that I will watch Season 3 alone. That didn't actually end up happening because I immediately liked this season and told her she should come watch it with me because it was so good. But yeah, West, I've been stealing the Sell It segment. So West, will you sell Book 3, Legend of Korra Change for our listeners?
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched Book 1 and 2, go watch Book 1 and 2. And now that you've watched Book 1 and 2 and you're wondering, why should I keep watching? My name is Spencer, and
Dude,
I thought...
for real, right? Like, why
I thought Season 2 had, like, a corny villain, had 2 corny villains. I thought it was way too much Mecha Avatar nonsense. And you were right. But in the very end of the previous season, the world turned over. Significant upheaval happened, and nowhere is more affected than Republic City, where all of a sudden there is just an enormous spirit forest just growing out of nowhere. What does that mean? How is the Avatar going to take responsibility for saving the world yet changing it all at once? How are people going to adapt? And how are we never going to set foot in Republic City again? Because apparently the story's not actually set there, even though the entire cast is centered there in terms of their story. But you're here because the characters are just as funny as ever. There's new ones. Boomy, and any character in an Avatar series named Boomy is a great character, but in this case, Tenzin's younger brother, Boomy, is just a older brother? I don't know.
Who are we talking about here?
Boomy.
Boomy's the younger brother, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, Boomy gets to step up. He's a great character.
Oh, wait, no. Maybe Boomy is the oldest.
I feel like he's the oldest, but I don't know for sure.
Now I'm questioning it, and I blame you.
All right, so Season 3, you're here to question. But the reason that you need to watch Season 3 was if you thought Amon was a way cool villain who totally had interesting motives, who absolutely terrified the crap out of you, and you thought that Unalaq and the bad spirit person, who doesn't matter because they're a bad spirit person and that's it, you thought they were corny villains. Well, good thing is season 3 has almost the scariest, most realistic, terrifying, fascinating villain of all time.
Amon is better, but I do agree with you.
But seriously, come for Team Avatar, stay for the villains.
Oh my gosh, the villains, right? Like, oh my gosh.
They're a team. It's great. It's perfect.
Oh my gosh. You just are just hooked. You're just like, oh yeah, I need more of, I need all of this? Do I need what? It's funny. I don't like binge watching TV shows, and to West's point, when a certain thing happens, I was like, yeah, I need to see the next episode. Like, the number of times where I stayed up way past my bedtime to watch this show was a lot.
The number of times I've forgotten I have a bedtime to watch any show is way too much. So that's good for you, Spencer.
So let's just say our first thoughts, spoiler free. And I'll go first because I was the voice of dissent on season 2. I gave it a 3. Which, to be fair, I am a really optimistic person.
To be fair,
I'm a really optimistic person. I'm a kind person. Like, I don't like to bag on anything, basically. It actually causes me pain to take
season 2 of Legend of Korra.
I mean, I gave it a 3, right? That's like okay. This was fine.
The lowest grade we've ever assigned in any of our review shows.
That is true. That is because you are also that way, though. Anyway, here's the thing. There were really amazing parts of season 2. And so I was like, okay, I like you said, I thought it was corny.
Season 2 was like a scale back, build the world season.
It was so weird.
Yeah, it was super weird.
It seemed so weird for what it was what it felt like it was supposed to be.
But we're not talking about season 2. We're talking about season 3.
Yes, and you get into season 3, and my first impression was captivating. I immediately wanted to know what was happening. I went from, do I even want to keep watching this show, into, oh my gosh, what is happening? I need to see the next episode. And that was my first impression of this season. And I will not say anything, because if I say anything else, it will spoil stuff.
Mine is actions have consequences.
That's true.
Like, this is a show where, like, choices characters make, things they do, have huge ramifications to the entire world, and we're in a season that says, okay, last season, stuff happened.
Last season's actions had consequences.
Threw down. Everything happened. They pulled out everything. Now let's, like, focus back. How did the world change? How are we going to keep up with it?
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating season because of it.
Yeah, I think that you really get that from, like, it might even be the first scene in the first episode, and kind of the frustration that you feel from Korra, where, like, people are like, snap. She's like, "Are you kidding me right now?
I saved the world,
and you're
worried about a tree in your house."
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think that both of our feelings really sum up the like if you have not watched this season, especially if you were questioning it after our last podcast review because of me, trust me, you should watch this season. With that being said, let's get into spoiler territory. Let's talk about the real stuff. Let's do overall impressions. A high-level look into how much we loved what we are reviewing. Oh my gosh. West, what happened? This went from season 1 of Korra, I loved. It was like equivalent to all of the things that I loved. It was in a lot of ways better than a lot of the things that I loved about The Last Airbender. I didn't love it. It was a contained story, so it was easier to love it that way. Whereas, Avatar The Last Airbender was 4 seasons of just greatness, right? But this season is so good. I mean, you start with Is it episode 1 where Boomy shows the airbending abilities?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
everything just happens right off the bat. You're just like, what is happening?
Honestly, I think part of the reason you were hooked is like the episode 1 of this season is just incredible in how many plot hooks it lays down.
Yeah, it's so funny
Airbenders
too.
are back.
Episode 1 is called A Breath of Fresh Air, which is exactly what this show needed. And it was beautiful. And it really set the tone for the unexpected in this season. This season constantly surprised me. It constantly left me on the edge of my seat, wanting more of this story, of what of honestly, when we talked about this in the pre-show that you can listen to on the Patreon, but Korra goes through so much as the Avatar. The thing about Aang is that there were no expectations of Aang, because Aang had been gone for 100 years.
Yeah, he had to do whatever he could do.
He just had to do whatever he could to save the world. And Korra is faced with the most BS politics, and it's like, like you said, accidents have consequences. So, and she's dealing with the consequences of her choice, and she's dealing with just the most.
I think that's actually what's so interesting is that Aang was Aang was a save the world avatar, right? Like his service, right? Because avatars are expected to do something, not just exist. Was to specifically there is a single thing that needs to be brought balance to go do it, right? That was Aang's story. Korra, especially starting this season, is just a fully realized avatar, just figuring out what she wants, what impact she wants on the world, how to cope with the fact that she has world-changing impact in everything she does and says. It's incredible. And she's just trying to cope.
I also think that she's taken the next step, right? In season 1, we actually talked about how the politics were kind of annoying, and how she didn't really do a good job of dealing with them. And now she's annoyed. Like, we were annoyed in season 1, and in season 3, she's like, I'm done with you.
Season 3 does not have the problem that seasons 1 and 2 did for Korra, which is that Korra is getting pulled in by these smiling faces and people that want to control her.
She knows what she wants, and she's like, no.
And who she trusts.
This is my decision, not your decision. Shut up. And I don't know. I loved that and respected that.
Do we get better ratings when you yell?
I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
I yell a lot, so.
That's okay. You can also yell quieter.
I cannot do that, but I will try.
Nah, whatever. You can be excited, but I don't know. It's funny.
To be fair, though, I use an audio leveler at the end. The listener can't hear me yelling.
There we go. But kudos to you, listeners. You didn't have to care. I called Spencer out for nothing. But so one overall impression I have is that the villain here is a gray villain, right? They're a person who sees what's wrong in the world, wants to change it, just has really drastic attitudes towards how to do it.
I love it when I empathize with a villain.
Yeah, it's good writing.
It's just it's so good.
I wanted to just to overall set the tone and just bring a few things back, which is first, we get in the first episode, which I think is such a critical episode for this season, just because it sets up so many things, right? We hear as early as episode 1, Zahir, this villain, this incredible criminal mastermind who has a new set of powers. He's also 100% prepared. He's got his quotes. He has his receipts. He's ready to quote one of the greatest airbending gurus of all time. And my God, what a quote. Let go your earthly tether. Enter the void, empty and become wind. Is a perfect airbender statement because I don't know what it means, but I feel it. And it's the guidepost for his entire plot this season, right? He is literally tethered. He's locked away, right? He lets go of it. he enters the void, this negative space of, as he says, new growth cannot exist without first the destruction of the old. Right? He's walking through this place of, of bad choices and negative things, a void, and it's going to leave him empty. And at the end, he becomes the wind, this powerful force of change that touches everything, affects everything. It's really cool. It's scary.
Yeah, I think that, my overall impression, man, do you know how many times I'm going to quote this book? So, if you're watching the video behind me, I have my favorite book of all time, Eldest. And I've actually talked about this book on the podcast before. And some of my favorite quotes.
Thank goodness I've read Eldest, because otherwise I would have had to read it. You're having to watch Naruto.
But in Eldest, if you haven't read it, you should read it. But one of the teachers of Aragon, the main teacher in that book, and I won't kind of spoil who that teacher is if you haven't read it, because you should go read it. But he asks Aragon a question of, what characteristic is the most important for a person to have? And, Aragon talks about having...
First off, that's a question you're supposed to struggle with, because there's not a right answer.
Yeah, Oramus
There's a lot of wrong answers.
Oramus disagrees, but he Aragon talks about, a desire to do good and, a conscience. And Oramus tells him that is actually not
that's dangerous.
Not the most important thing, because all kinds of people do terrible things seeking to make the world a better place and to do what they think is right. And I think that in this season you really see that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because this season is really interesting, because the villain is coming with this like world-encompassing, what is best for everybody point of view, right? And Korra's like, I'm just looking out for me and mine. Why do you keep coming for me?
I don't even know if Korra thinks he's wrong.
No, that's actually part of the struggle.
Yeah.
Like throughout it, right? And like I think that's what's really interesting is that Korra is fighting in a selfish way the whole season. Not like in a like heartless selfish way, but in a like, I am going to put my energy where I feel good.
Yeah.
Right? Which is with making the Airbender Nation come back. With seeing that her...
I don't know that it's selfish, right? Like, he's talking about balance in a different way than she's talking about balance, right?
Yeah.
She's talking about balancing the elements. He's talking about balancing the world. And she's at conflict, trying to say, wait, what is my job as the Avatar? Is it to balance the nations, quote unquote? Is it to balance the world, quote unquote? Or is it to balance the elements? Like, what? So now she's questioning herself. And the fact that he's able to make her question that is really big.
Yeah, Zahir gets in her head really well, in a way that Aemon did very well, and Unalaq just isn't interesting at all for doing. But moving from Zahir, there's some other things about the season that I think are just like absolutely fantastic. In terms of like what I loved about this, I love the fleshing out of what it means to be a metal bender in this world. I love that setting. And I think it makes sense that it's an extremely privileged, sheltered place, right? Because that's what metal can do.
That's what metal gave humanity, so obviously it gives these people that.
Yeah, totally. Like,
no,
100%.
I mean, if we just look at the ages of humanity, anything that you've done with metal that made that advanced civilization was just... I mean, it's so funny, because even in this, they're like, good luck bending that, it's platinum, and I'm like, all right, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going off now.
No, it's good. Like, and like, I love that. I love this, right? There's a few different like communities that we get into here, right? We get this airbender community that's starting to grow. And what does it mean, right? Like, Tenzin had a really good handle on what it meant to be like a last of his kind airbender. right? Protection first. Tradition's really important because there's not a big enough culture to make new tradition, right? Like all of these things really mattered. And then new airbenders show up and the whole society gets, the whole way of life gets this enormous breath of fresh air, right? This like big old injection of like real world that Tenzin was removed from his whole life.
Yeah. Can we kind of, I know that you wanted to move away from Zahir, but I actually think that episode 2 was...
Oh, I mean, we're not going to be able to move Rain for Zahir
Sure,
for longer than
all
30
right.
seconds at a time because he is the season. The season is Zahir the season.
But it's so funny because Devonair actually did watch episode 1 with me, and then I watched episode 2 without her. And so she joined me back in on episode 3, and it was really funny because like episode 2 was the reason I brought her back. I'm like, all right, you actually do want to watch all of this. And I told her she needed to go back and watch episode 2. She just never did. But like, oh my gosh, did that prison break was a huge moment in the show and set the tone for what this season was and what my overall impression was.
When Zahir breaks out his boo.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that this... So first of all, I want to talk about... the reason this episode was so interesting is because it breaks down... It's funny because somebody told me that this was actually their problem with all of Korra. And then Devonair actually mentioned something. I'm going to mention Devonair throughout all of the times we do this podcast. And for those who don't know, it's my wife. But she talked about how it really frustrated her that she didn't understand what elements broke down with what bending. So like, and even for me, I did not notice that waterbender didn't have arms until way later in the season. Like, I just thought the water was around for arms, and then I was like, and she's like Katara to the extreme. But these benders are the extreme benders. We have combustion bending, which is like apparently fire bending from your brain. We've got
Sparky Boom Man.
Yeah, Sparky Boom Man. We've got lava bending, which is, you know, earth bending to the extreme. We've got water bending that like is ice whenever she wants. The thing is I don't feel like
water bending has always been able to turn to ice at any time.
Right, but she's able to like,
She's
that's
really
true.
Good.
She's just really good at it. We've got metal bending. I guess water bending is really blood bending, which we already covered. Then we've got, and then the only one that doesn't kind of have this like extreme one is airbending so far. But you kind of see like the extremes of bending on this team. You have this person...
I mean, they're the 4 most powerful benders easily that we've seen at this point in any Avatar series. Like, I think I can say that pretty easily. I
think Aang was probably a better airbender than any of the airbenders that we've seen, but...
I was actually going to say Toph is the only one I can say is actually competitive with them.
Oh, I don't think Toph's bending metal... I think that Toph in her time was better, but it's like the LeBron James versus Michael Jordan conversation, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Who is if we take in their prime any bender from the entire show, right? Okay. These are 4 of the best by a lot, right?
Well, then yes, absolutely.
But I think Toph, especially in a cage match, Toph is any of them.
I don't think that Toph could beat the lava bender, but
you're forgetting one thing, Spencer.
What's that?
Actually, Toph would lose. Yeah, easy matchup loss to Lava Bender just because of
her feet would burn and she would lose.
Yeah, but Toph has such a good fighting competitive advantage in her ability to sense things.
Sure, I do think that these villains really set the tone for this season. Do you have anything else you want to say about overall impressions? Because I feel like we could actually do this whole show in overall impressions, and I want to get into favorite characters, favorite storylines, stuff like that.
Yeah, the other overall impression that sticks with me is the Earth Kingdom is like a recurring problem in Avatar.
That was what I was gonna say for my last thing for our impressions. Okay, you say what you're gonna say, and then I'll say what I'm gonna say.
Oh, and Zuko on a dragon is cool.
You just stole one of my favorite storylines.
Is that a storyline?
It was for me.
Okay.
No, we were sitting watching it, and Devonair, when oh my gosh, I already forgot his name. I'm so bad with names. It's so hard to do these podcasts sometimes. What's the main villain's name?
Zahir.
Zahir, thank you. When Zahir kills the Earth Queen, Devonair was like, that was gruesome. And I was like, applauding. I was like, listen, I know he's a bad guy. But, like, he's not worse than her. Like, in the ultimate scheme of things, I actually don't think he's worse. I think she's worse. And I'm glad he killed her. And the thing is like, listen, what I actually said for that, all of that was a joke. I didn't really say all of that. That's what I thought. But I actually said,
you better recant all of that.
No, I don't recant all that. I think that she is worse than him, like as a person. I expected a bunch of centaurs to come and attack her and carry her away after a giant showed up. If you didn't get that, then you're not a millennial. But she is the Dolores Umbridge of whatever generation watched this show. Like, I hate her. I absolutely hate her. I hate her on the level that I hate Dolores Umbridge. She is disgusting. And she shows... The Earth Kingdom is really interesting because, you know, in season 1 we talk about how the Fire Nation in a lot of ways represents America, but I don't know what the Earth Kingdom represents other than just a terrible, like, monarchy that is set up.
I mean, the Earth Kingdom is just every monarchy that's ever existed.
Just disgusting.
When you have a divine right to rule and the ability to separate yourself from people's lives.
It is so gross, and so she has no qualifications to lead people and to make the world any better. And she doesn't even try to. She only is there for self-service. And, you know, one of the things that I love about villains is when they do something that you want them to do.
Also, the callbacks to this are just fascinating, right? Like,
talking about how she ate his bear? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm thinking like book 3s of Avatar having a coup against the Earth Kingdom in like the same sort of like walk up to you casually and infiltrate things way. It's all very fascinating.
Yeah, I was really,
and they clearly knew what they were doing with writing that.
Yeah. Can I ask you? Were you happy when she died?
No.
Yeah, you're a better person than me.
Well, no. Here's the thing. And granted, this is a tiniest bit. This is you haven't seen season 4 yet.
So I do understand the conflict and the. So once people started looting, I wasn't happy for what it's worth.
Yeah. I think that's the problem. Is that the fix that Zahir chooses for how to reform the Earth Nation is a cop-out, is an ineffective way to truly effect change, right?
I completely agree. A French Revolution would have been much better. Behead her in front of the entire country. I agree. Sorry, that was a joke.
Yeah, I get it, but we're dealing in heady stuff here. Just that, like, you can't, like, and this is Zahir's weakness, right? Which is that you can't create a better way with the same bad way.
No, it's true. I think that it's
the
so
tools
funny.
of the oppressor are not going to free the people.
Zahir reminds me a lot of Jason Solo from Legacy of the Force Star Wars, where he is, I know you don't get it, he is 100% right that the government is wrong. He's just right. He's right that the government's wrong. He's right that it is corrupt. And he's right that something needs to change. But the the
But like
method and the solution is just wrong.
Yeah.
And
Here's diagnosis that something is wrong, but then he amputates the head to solve it.
Exactly. It is. You are right, and what you are doing is you are doing something for the good, but it is the wrong approach, and I think that tells a lot about this season. And the Earth Kingdom is the perfect place to start with, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, think about you know, was it season 3 that all of that stuff happened? And it was, right? Or no, it was season 2. I think you're messed up because there are actually only 3 seasons of Last Airbender. Season 2 is
book 2. You're right. Yeah.
I was gonna say you really confused me there, but
I really wish there were 4 seasons of Avatar.
Dude, me too. They could have done it anyway. No, but in book 2, you get to the center of Ba Sing Se, and there's no war. It's like, what?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, is that the center of Ba Sing Se, the palace of Ba Sing Se, is always discordant with reality.
Yeah.
That's what we've discovered, right? Like, and in Avatar The Last Airbender, we discovered that the king's been sheltered from it his whole life. He has no idea about it, and he wants to go be curious about it.
Yeah.
In this case, the queen knows everything that's going on. She just chooses to not care.
Oh, she's way worse than that.
True.
She knows what's going on. Oh. I actually might hate her more than I hate Dolores, and she gets way less screen time. Like,
yeah, that I was gonna say that's a lot of you having. Okay, things I love, things I absolutely love.
Wait, no. Let's go to favorite characters.
Okay,
we're doing favorite characters next, and then favorite storylines.
Can I go first?
Yeah, do your favorite character. I want to know.
Bolin and Mako's grandma.
Oh, that's so interesting.
She's
Can
so
I ask
cute.
a question?
She's fascinating.
Can I ask a question?
I love her.
What is her fascination with the queen? I don't think I got it.
What is her fascination with the queen?
Yeah,
It's a lifetime of being
propaganda
told
allegiance. Like, is that?
Yeah,
what it is?
She's
so sad.
Totally. She's an incredible character because she's complex and has multitudes.
She's my grandma. I don't like that.
But like, that's exactly what happens. Is like. And we find this especially with our elders, where when society has had this same unjust perspective for such a long time, even those most oppressed by it will reinforce it and salute it because that's what they know and that's what they've been told is a successful existence, a meaningful existence.
I do love her. She's so adorable.
And I just don't think that she connects the challenge of her family's life with the opulence of the queen. She just sees those two things kind of isolated and assumes that like the queen's doing her best, but it's hard to exist. But she's just got unconditional love.
Do you have a favorite line from her?
Oh my goodness. Not off the top of my head, and if it was, it'd be from season 4.
Is she in season 4?
Yeah.
She's so cute.
Yeah.
This segment was actually kind of hard for me to pick, and I'll kind of explain why. Because my favorite storylines in this season are not the same as my favorite character. My favorite character in this is Bolin.
Bolin's just getting better and better.
But well, I don't know. I'm a couple episodes into season 4, and I'm pretty disappointed. But that's kind of a spoiler. But Bolin opens up in a way in this season with Opal that is really appreciated. Like, he's really honest. Oh man, I might cry because he gets so vulnerable. It is hard to want to be something and do something that you can't do. And to have everybody tell you that you can do something and to know that you maybe you actually can't. And he handles it really well. And I think that for him it's probably really frustrating because, you know, Mako just is great at everything he tries. He's a great police officer. He got a job as a lightning bender because he had that special ability. It is, I think that the reason that he resonated so well with being a movie star is because he finally felt special. And, he.
Also, all of our characters are absolute suckers to anyone who make them feel special, like our core 3 members
Oh,
of
it's
Team
so true.
Avatar.
It's so true.
They will fall for anyone who makes them feel special for a day every time.
It's so true.
Which
And
is so resonant because I agree.
it's hard. It's hard to feel that way. But Bolin is really honest in this season. And it's funny because you would think that the reason I love him is because he's the comedic relief, and he's also hysterical in this. Like, he is so funny in this season. I did not find him as funny in there. He has his moments in season 2, and he's obviously the comic relief in season 1. But in this season, he's actually, like, I was laughing out loud at him most of the time. But at the same time, I think that he has, outside of Korra, because it's really easy to say Korra. I think neither of us said Korra, even though.
I think like it goes without saying that like the center protagonist
Yeah, exactly.
is a favorite character, but if we're shouting out favorite characters,
Yeah,
we're not going to pick them.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Korra goes through so much and handles it so well, but I think that the person that goes through so much and handles it so well outside of Korra is probably Bolin. And I don't know. I did not expect that from this season going in.
Well, I think that like Bolin has this like really tenacious quality to him, which is he won't give up, but he will absolutely turn directions on a dime if he thinks that there's a better path.
I can see that. I also just appreciate
right? He leans into the movers. He leans into like, there's this airbending thing happen. Let's make it great. Like he leans into everything, and it's a really valuable skill, and it makes him very fun.
He has
right?
a quality that I have.
His date with Korra in season 1, right, is like the most fun Korra's like ever had, right?
Yes.
Even if it's not romantic, it's
actually
really fun.
Yes, you're actually getting to exactly the point I was just going to make, which is that Bolin is a people pleaser, and as another people pleaser, that to a detriment in my life, I think that it is a detriment in Bolin's life. And Bolin in this season has to tackle the fact that sometimes it is about Bolin getting better and not improving the world of people around him. And I don't know, it really he really resonated with me this season. He was my favorite character. What was your favorite storyline, West? You can give 2, because I know that there's like this season was. You said this during the pre-show too, but it was packed.
Yeah, super packed, very dense. The Tenzin's kids is a really fun storyline.
So let's
all of them have their moments.
Let's talk about Jinora for a second, because this is one of mine. If I'm going to give 2, Jinora's storyline is very interesting. Jinora is, I mean, she's the heir apparent to Aang. Like, she is an amazing, spiritual, great airbender.
Yeah.
And she has to struggle with. Anyway, talk about all the kids, and then we can talk about Jinora, because that's the only one I have.
Sure. I think that, like, Milo has a fantastic season.
It's a better storyline than him, making lemurs his slaves. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, he grows up, right? And, like, that's the thing is, like, first off, it's low-hanging fruit, right? Because Milo has a lot of growing he can do forever,
true.
right? Like,
that's true.
But he is right? He's the youngest character in the show that, like, has any meaningful relevance. And so, like, but, like, this is Legend of Korra. There are no punches pulled. Life is real. And Milo just rolls. He organizes. He leads. He follows his examples, which I think is so cool. Milo, like, is so good at replicating the best part of his favorite of his, like, heroes. Like, he can totally do the Tenzin thing if that's what he wants to do. And he's kind of bad at that because Tenzin's kind of bad at the Tenzin thing. He can do the Boomy thing, and he's really good at that because Boomy's really good at leading. He can do spiritual guidance. Like, but he's just repeating what other people are doing, which is totally a kid thing to do, but he does it really well, and he leads really well.
I agree. Yeah.
And Miki is hard. She has this middle child
Be careful,
syndrome.
West.
Huh?
I said, be careful, West, as I point at myself for middle child syndrome.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like, you feel it better than I then. Like, it is hard for Iki to stand out because she has a younger sibling who is doing dumber things than she is. She has an older sibling that's doing cooler things than she is. So she has to like find her way here. But at the same time, she gets to just like revel in this togetherness of this whole airbending nation, and she gets to define herself no longer in there are 4 of us, what is my place? Right? It's now there are many of us, what is my place, and how am I going to lead, and how am I going to keep things going? And like the more that Jinora is like stepping out and above, the more Iki's the airbender who like has to interact with the other airbenders and tell them what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that this
really
is
important.
I think this is a great like snake that we can do here, because I have a 1A and 1B here, which is kind of what you said, which is the Airbender Nation being rebuilt is a really interesting storyline. I'm not really interested in Boomy. I think that Boomy is not that interesting of a character, but I think that the kids' interaction with Boomy and Boomy's interaction with the Airbenders as a storyline is really interesting. And I think that Jinora wanting to be a leader and trying to, I don't know how to say this, trying to be the person that she believes that she is, despite having, how do I say this in a podcast friendly way, despite having a really crappy parent, not crappy, that's not even true, it's so hard. Being a parent's hard, by the way, for anybody wondering.
Now imagine your 3 kids are what you thought for the longest time were the only hope for the most important thing in the world to you.
We'll get into this and could be betters, but Jinora is walking a really hard tightrope. First of all, it is impossible to live up to your parents' expectations when your parents' expectations are a culture that is impossible to live up to. That doesn't...
Yeah.
And it is not fair to her. And she does so well with it. If I picked a second favorite character, it would have been Jinora in this season. Because she...
And I didn't pick Jinora this season because I talked about Jinora last season, and you were like, no, Jinora last season.
Oh, she is... I'm sure she'll be my favorite in season 4 too, after just watching the first 2 episodes. But she is amazing. Her story is amazing. I just it was so funny. There was a TikTok that I watched right before we recorded this episode where people just want the story of Jinora and, oh my gosh, what is her boyfriend's name?
Kai.
Like, that is all they want. And I agree. Like, I would just watch that. I would just watch that season. I think that what Jinora is trying to accomplish in dealing with Tenzin being Tenzin as her dad, like, Tenzin is hard enough. Tenzin as your dad has to be impossible.
Yeah.
And she does a really good job dealing with that. Do you have another storyline? I have one more, but if you have one, I want you to let you go first.
Metal Benders.
I thought that would be yours. Talk about that.
So, right, we have this like section, this like part of like it's like episodes 5 through 8, where we're in the city of the Metal Clan. I forget what it's called. In Zaofu. And so we have Toph's 2 daughters. We have Lin Beifong, who's the police chief of Republic City, and we have her sister, who is named Suyin. And we have this immediate, like, foils, right? We have Lin Beifong, who is a slave to her work, following the passion of her mother, the creation of her mother, right? This police force of metalbenders really has this sense of like who she is and what she's doing in the world and the respect of the people there. But there are cracks in that. She totally does not have her personal life on lockdown because she just avoids it. Whereas Suyin has 4 kids. They're all very different. Several of them are very talented metal benders. She is the matriarch of this very rich society that has it all going for them. Yet their bonding moment, the connection between the two is the fact that their mother is weirder and harder to understand than either of them. Right? Their bond is that like we both don't understand what our mother stood for and why she behaved the way she did after all these years. We don't really know where she is. We don't really know what she's doing. We're just kind of here to like just try and figure this out. And they both have very different answers to like how they best live up to their mother's legacy. And in between all of this, they have this wedge that's driving them even further, both apart and together in separate ways, which is that Opal, the daughter of Suyin, is an airbender now, after being, I guess, disappointing for years in a sense because she's not a metal bender. And just like,
can we just talk about that for a second? Like,
it's complicated.
It's so ridiculous. Like, if bending does not, I mean, it talks about exactly what the entire point of season 1 is, which is like, how do you just instantly become a second-class citizen within your own family because you're born differently? It is so infuriating. It's like,
yeah, and worse, it's tied to utility of that person, right? Which
yes.
is even worse because it's very easy to justify the value of a person based on their utility.
Yeah.
It's not right to do so, but it's very easy to do so.
Yeah.
And like they have like, you know, Lynn doesn't even want to come. Right? But by the end, they have rediscovered what it means to be family together. They have undergone this horrifying experience of, you know, Suyin almost losing a daughter like 3 times and Lynn more or less having like similar feelings and guardianship towards Korra in some ways.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how like they are so broken by the fact that their mother never really, like, Lynn followed in the same mistakes of her mother and didn't find happiness that way, right? Suyin walked a very different path and embraced family, which Lynn and Toph never did.
I have a new could be better while you're talking, so now I have 3.
Awesome. Great.
I love like, this.
Also, the fight, like, that fight when they're, like, in that metal dome, lava is everywhere.
Oh, it's so
is amazing. Just such a cool fight. Like, it's really fun. Like, metalbenders are like some of the coolest fighters on screen in Avatar.
Yeah,
which is fascinating.
My last storyline is a little different than yours. I'm the type of person that has a lot of empathy when it comes to other people. And I love, to a fault, really, for me. And my empathy for Zahir is, and the Red Lotus it's pretty great. I understand their want to make a change in the world. And honestly, my favorite storyline is, one of my favorite storylines is his love life. And
I almost did that one as well.
It's really hard because you're rooting against these people, but also like I shed a tear when she died. Like I was like, oh man. Especially right after that other scene. Oh, I might cry now. It's hard because like you know they're trying to do the right thing, but you know they're doing the wrong. It's so hard, and that's just good writing.
Yeah, the less certain you are.
It like, going into kind of, I mean, even to the end of this season, I wanted Zahir to see the error of his ways. I wanted him to teach all of the airbenders to fly. I wanted him to be a better person. And obviously you don't get that, but it was hard. It was hard to watch her die and know that Zahir is so into his belief of what is right and what needs to be done that he couldn't even mourn correctly. And it hurt me for Zahir because he needed that. I think that it would have made him a better person. I think that it would have, like, if Zahir just took a moment to step back and say, I just lost the person I cared the most about. Is this still worth it? Maybe he would have changed his mind. It was I don't know. I don't know if I cared too much about like these cartoon characters, but it was hard to watch. But yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about could be betters. I'm gonna go first because I have a couple.
Okay.
And because I want to get the first one out of the way. I am infuriated that Tenzin has the exact same character arc in this season that he did in last season. It makes absolutely no sense that a person that went through trying to learn to accept others, being able to do things that he couldn't do, being able to, I mean, just the whole thing. Like, oh my gosh.
It's because Tenzin's an archetype, not a character.
That's bad.
It's bad writing, I agree, but Tenzin represents like father figure who wants to protect people at their own detriment.
Here's the thing: is that Tenzin has this heroic moment in this season where you feel for Tenzin, but it is so hard to feel for Tenzin, where if Tenzin had been a better person, you almost wonder if that moment would have happened if he had let go and allowed people to grow. And it is so frustrating. It's hard. It is. I don't like Tenzin. Like, Tenzin is a bad parent, a bad teacher. Like, and maybe that's good writing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they need that in their writing, but it just frustrates me because he goes through growth in season 2 where you think he's accepted these things and he's improved as a person, and then he goes through the exact same things in this season, and you're like, okay, so you learned nothing and you're just a pile of crap. Like, what is your point in the show other than to be a pile of crap that hurts other people and brings people down and doesn't improve and doesn't let others improve? Like, why are you here?
So I talked about this in our season 2 review, right? Which is the pressure cooker that Tenzin's been in his whole life.
But he already went through it.
Well, no, Tenzin.
So now you're saying just because other airbenders have showed up, he has to go through it again? Because that seems.
I'm not saying he has to go through it again. I'm saying
it seems like he's mad that it's his brother. Like, if it had been his sister and she could waterbend and airbend, he'd be fine. But because it's Boomy, he's upset.
Yeah, Tenzin is a person who is stuck in his insecurities. He's so stuck in his insecurities.
I don't.
He's stuck in his insecurities, his expectations, her anxieties, the load he puts on himself that he won't let others carry. Right, like. He is totally like a real relatable character and a certain type of person. And it's frustrating that he doesn't grow through all of this. But
he did. That's the problem.
Is that he did revert. And a big part of that is that, yeah, it's not great. Television is all about characters growing little by little over time.
He did. If he had not, like, here's the thing. This could have been the moment that he grew and I would have liked it. I don't care when it is. I care that he did Oh no, maybe I'm wrong. I'm already changing my mind. Do you know what Revergo is?
Revertigo?
Yeah.
It's when you feel like you're back where you started, but
No.
feel like you're also moving.
So Revertigo.
Vertigo is when it feels like you're moving, but you're not. So revertigo is
I'm gonna pull up the actual definition, but Revertigo basically happens pretty often with your family, for what it's worth.
when
But
you're with your family, you revert back to yourself.
you revert back to a previous version of yourself that you are most common with somebody in your family. So
Yeah.
when you see people from your past, you start acting like you did when you used to spend time with them. Is the definition.
And Tenzin gets it real bad for Billy.
I actually now am going to say that Tenzin is experienced with vertigo, and I am wrong, and I'm sorry, Tenzin. I have also done this and had to overcome it.
Yeah, I think that Tenzin is he's a beautiful picture of struggle.
It's so frustrating. It's funny because I think that often the things that we find the most frustrating about others is things that we've had to deal with. And
the things that are also the most frustrating about ourselves. Yeah.
And I think that my Revertigo is really, really bad at times. And Tenzin just is off the wall on it in this season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I have now changed the could be better to maybe that is actually what's happening to Tenzin, and I'm okay with it. My next could be better. I think that a lot of people disagree with me here, but I was really frustrated with the defeated state of Korra at the end of the season. And it's not that I don't like that the Airbender Nation takes it upon themselves to try and help her. It's not that. It is feeling defeated at the end of the season.
Spencer, do you know how long people had to wait for episode 1 of book 4?
I don't
after
know.
the
How
end.
How long was it? Was
2
it
months.
days?
2 months.
2 months? That's not very long. I had to wait less time, and I was still frustrated for what it's worth.
Yeah. If you watched it, the television debut of the last episode of season 3 is a day before the first episode of the online. Actually post-dated. Came out after.
Of season 4?
You could watch chapter 1 of season 4 online before you could watch.
All right. So there was the same timeline. So here's the thing. Here's my actual frustration. Korra went through way too much in this season.
Yeah.
Like, the could be better is no.
Be nice to Korra.
I just don't.
I like it. I like that.
I just don't know that anyone deserves this much.
No.
It hurts to watch to the point where it's like, I said this in the pre-show, but like, let her stand up at the end or just anything. Give us a glimmer of hope for her, because nobody in a written. I'm fine with sad endings, but I don't know. It was just too much for me. I don't know. It hurt to watch. Oh man, I might cry. She deals with so much, and it was too much for me. And maybe that's a personal problem, right? Where it's like, Spencer, you need to be better at this. Felt like the Empire of Legend of Korra, where like you are defeated at the end. Like we
barely got out.
Everything's lost.
In tatters.
And I understand that you quote unquote won, but you've lost. Like the Earth Kingdom is not a thing, and it's the majority of the world. For those who've never seen the map, like the Earth Kingdom's like all of it. The Air Nation is, just whatever it is.
The Water Nation is two
distinct, separate
single
entities.
Cities, basically.
Yeah,
it was like a bunch of traders between, and then the Fire Nation is an island chain. Yeah, it definitely like
It feels like you've lost, right? Like the world is broken apart. This whole thing that you've built, this Republic City, is broken down, and you end the season with she doesn't even like Tenzin makes the speech, and she doesn't even look happy. Like, what? Where are we at here? The could be better is just I don't know. Give me something to look forward to because I'm so sad for her specifically that it hurt me to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert, I've watched the beginning of season 4 and I'm more hurt now.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm defeated. And I'm not even her.
Season 3 is a tragedy.
Yeah.
In terms of like the archetypes of stories, season 3 is a tragedy. Everything started out really good.
No, I mean not really.
No, we got new airbenders. That's really exciting. Like, there's a happy, positive tone to the beginning of the season with this undershadow of Zahir. But like,
I mean, and the spirits ruining Republic City.
Ruining?
I mean, as
Cabbage
the
Man
people
might complain. But clearly, the savvy people will figure this out and make nice bonds. Like, Foaming at Mouth Guy would love it.
Any other could be better for you. It's funny. It's a hard could be better, right? Because it's like
no, totally. Like,
I get that some amount of story needs to be sad. I get that I need to have these feelings in order to enjoy something. And I loved this season, but it actually hurt me to watch this level of defeat for another person. I mean, I talked about this earlier, but like, Aang wakes up 100 years later and is just like so defeated that he didn't get to help the world. And Korra is doing everything she can. Ugh, it is exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, like, just picture what if Aang doesn't get trapped in ice for 100 years? What if he actually has to put up with an immediate "the world is falling apart" burden? Like, I think he goes through the same situation. I don't think he comes out as well as Korra does.
I hurt for Korra, and it like
and I think a big part of this is
good,
that
it's
this
good
world,
writing, but at the same time, just like
this world has a problem.
Yeah,
right. Which is that sometimes the fulcrum of the entire world is a 15-year-old girl. And that's a problem. That's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a grown adult. And that's also not good. You don't want the whole world to rest with one person at any time.
I think that, like, my problem here is that I want stories to give me hope in humanity and in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that all of them can't do that. But, like, if we look at, my problems with other TV shows and other things like that, like, I mean, we'll just take I hate Breaking Bad. There is not a redeemable character in that show. There's not a redeemable moment in that show. I've watched that. I have tried so hard to love that show. I've watched that show 3 times all the way through. I hate it. I hate it. And I hate it for the reasons that this moment is it could be better for me. It's just like, what was the point? What was the story you were trying to tell?
I mean,
maybe Jinora is the story. Maybe the story is Jinora here, and that's what I needed to take away. But I left this.
No, you're wrong. I think the story is the takeaway you walked away with.
Then I'm heartbroken, and
when I watched this at the ripe age of checks notes 19,
that can't be true.
2014. I was born in 1985.
I was 24 when this came. I mean, I didn't watch this when it came out, so I don't know.
This is like one of the hardest stories I'd ever consumed at this point.
It's one of the hardest stories I've consumed. I'm 30 years old now, Wes.
Yeah, and I actually think that's like a testament to its stability. Like, I think it's a good thing. I think it's hard. It tells us, right, the tragedy of trying to reshape the world with the wrong intent.
Wes, do you have any other could be betters before we move on to ratings?
More Mako? We didn't talk about him. We didn't talk about him, right?
I think that that's true. I don't know if that is a symptom of
too many characters.
Well, it's not just too many characters, but I think that like they did so much to build up her relationship with him in the first 2 seasons that the fact that they don't have one anymore really diminishes. I actually agree with that. I think that like Mako is such a good person.
He's a fun character.
And a fun character and like cares so much about his brother, whether or not no matter who he's dating, he just cares about other individuals. I agree with that. I think that Mako gets really it's frustrating too because like I mean, it sure could be better, but he doesn't get the credit he deserves as to the type of person he is.
Not to spoil anything, he's got a better season 4.
He already has a better season 4 in the first 2 episodes that I've watched. So
actually, those 2 episodes really lay the ground for like where he's going, and it's a really interesting one for sure. But like I think I would like to see more Mako just because he's a fun character, and like I really feel like he was so far ahead in season 1, and he's kind of so far behind now in terms of like amount of character growth he's gotten to do and where his abilities have gotten.
Yeah. By the way, we didn't mention this in storylines, and I want to mention it before we give ratings. Is Bolin discovering that he is a lava bender was like absolutely one of the best moments in the show. Just like, I can't metal bend, but I can do something Toph never did. Let's go. I really loved that.
And it's so like Bolin needed that win.
He really did, and he deserved it. Like, another could be better. Do not bring back douchebag McGee, movie director.
Barrick?
Is that his? I don't even remember. I know
Barrick.
Jolie's name, but I don't even remember his name.
Barrick.
That was completely worthless, not funny, not interesting. Just don't even bring him back. Is he in season 4? Am I going to hate him again? Yeah, I am. All right, that's fine. Okay. Overall ratings, I will go first. You actually brought my rating up during my Could Be Betters. I was going to give this a 4. I'm going to give it a... Oh, I might go up even higher. The fact that I am wrong about Tenzin and that he's going through something that I have personally struggled with really changes things for me. And because I haven't finished season 5, so I'm going to give this a tentative 4.5. And when I say that, I mean...
You actually can identify the growth that Tenzin's done at the end of the season when him, who's the only person that can decide, takes his 14-year-old daughter and makes her a master, says, "You are my equal." Because the only other person we know who's been made a master that young in this whole series is Aang, who did it like 11. But he was the Avatar.
All right, I'm just gonna change it. I'm gonna give it a 5. I'm gonna put hope in season 4, in season 4, to fix the problems that I have with Korra and make it all worth it. It's gonna be the Empire Strikes Back of Avatar, and I'm gonna believe in it.
You're 2 episodes into season.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really hard moment to be at the overall series.
I'm so hurt right now. Like, my heart is aching. Oh man, I'm gonna cry. I hope that Korra gets whatever she deserves. I'm going to give this a 5 in hope.
That's such a weird thing to say, hopefully, because I think it's such a thing that you would say about someone you hate, not a thing you would say about someone you want the world. I know what you mean by it, but
I think Korra deserves. Really, I think Korra deserves everything.
Yeah.
Man, I am crying now. I think that she has struggled so much. Yeah. I'm going to give this a 5 in hopes that... I'm going to say it's a 4.5 unless... If... Oh man, it might be way worse than that. Like, if Korra just, like, ends up being miserable forever, this is like a 0. Like, it's like, all of this was worthless, I'm so upset. But if Korra ends up happy, this is a 5. Like, it has a sequel problem where I now need to know the ending of her story to know if this was all worth it. Because if she ends up miserable, I don't think the story's worth it. I think the writers put me through misery for no reason.
It's fascinating that you don't know. Like, there's one moment from the ending of the
I
series
know
that the entire internet knows.
I know the last scene,
Okay,
but I don't know if that means she's happy.
you don't know the path to get there.
Yeah, like
Fair
I
enough.
know what the last scene. I mean, I guess I don't know if it's the last scene, but I do know. I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah, the internet knows. The
The
internet
internet
knows.
knows. If you're listening to this, you probably know. But
You
I
were on Tumblr in 2014. You know.
I have never had a Tumblr in my life, and I regret it because I am a millennial and not a Gen Z. I think you're an in-betweener, by the way.
I lean on the millennial side of the in-betweener, but yes.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna give this a 5 because I believe in the writers. I believe that they have given me enough proof to know that it will all end where I'm not. I literally have tears coming out of my eyes. I feel so much for Korra. And obviously I'm like a little bit ahead. Like I'm crying now seeing her how I've seen her now. But
Like, I think that you're just numb if you end the season at the end. Like, if Venom and the Red Lotus is the last episode of Avatar, Legend of Korra you watched, you leave numb. Whereas for you, we're dealing with the pain, the aftermath, the actual pain. Not we're processing.
I think even more than that. Like even if I just end it right then, I mean I was just mad.
Also, if we thought that our last episode was our longest episode ever,
yeah, I think we're at we're at 118. To be fair, this is nothing compared to things I've done on constructive criticism.
Sure.
Give me your rating.
Oh, easy 5. I would take this season. I would take this season over books 2 or 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a greater complete work than Korra, if you ask me. But this season is the best.
That's
this
how
entire franchise gets.
That's how I feel too, which is why I was willing to give it a 5. I feel the exact same way. It's like, listen,
there's no amount of loss in any of the other things that like make me feel as much. There is no amount of hope as any of the other ones that make me think about like the idea that the Airbenders are going to go be like world nomadic spreaders of peace and freedom actually is a huge step in the right direction towards solving the problem that this world has, which is it's too dependent on one person to do its justice.
You can find me at Spencer13H. You can find West at East Monotone. By the way, I thought you wrapped that up so well that I'm not going to do it. You can follow my adventure trying to understand Wes Singleton and his Naruto reference on TikTok at Heezy Game on TikTok. You can follow the show over on YouTube. Just look up Heezy Game Media. And you can follow the show at Heezy Game Media and Need to Nerd on Twitter, depending on what you're looking for. West, I hope people like and sub. I hope that the fact that I cried way more in this episode than I expected, but I just care so much for like the amount of pain that Korra goes through. It was really hard for me to watch this season. If you have a chance to review us on iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you're listening, it actually really helps the show. I already know some of you have done it, and I plan as we continue the show to kind of read those reviews as they come in. Thank you to those who have subscribed on YouTube recently. I know that this show has gained some subscribers in the last month, and it's really appreciated. This show has been so fun for me, West. I really appreciate you doing this with me.
And at times tear-jerking, which is part of the fun.
Oh man, I'm like broken. I don't know if it's because of the vodka I drank or the fact that Korra gets a raw deal, man. But
Korra gets a very raw deal.
It's so
Pet your
hard.
favorite polar bear dog, everyone.
Oh my gosh, my wife, by the way, Debonair.
My wife.
Devonair is super concerned with what is the polar bear dog's name?
Naga.
Naga. She is super concerned that the dog is left out a bunch. She feels like the dog doesn't get enough airtime. And she was also concerned with Zuko's dragon. Zuko's dragon was alone a lot in this season without Zuko. Feels like you could use a dragon more, Zuko. You could have fixed a lot of problems with a dragon. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Next week, we will be with our former
Listen
ghost.
to me rant about why when you have a relationship with a dragon, that dragon is not your tool to solve the world's problems.
No, or you could figure out how to have donkey dragon babies, depending on the episode that comes out. Don't forget...
That's a good use for your dragons.
Yeah.
Although don't, consensual breeding, please.
Yeah, it was consensual. I promise. We will be joined by our former host, Michael Merrill, next week to talk about his short film. Wes, did you get a chance to watch it yet? I think he sent it to you. I don't know if you watched it yet. He might not have sent it to you. Don't hold me to that. But join us next week as we talk about short films and a short film that will soon be on Amazon as we give you an early access look to one very soon. Thank you everybody so much for listening and watching. We'll see you guys all next week with another episode of Need to Nerd. You can't
Seriously, dragons are our friends, not plot points to save the world. That's right. I said what I said. And remember, the person who wrote that was a 17/20-year-old.
I think it was 14 in this one.
Okay.
Listen, he makes it very clear that dragons are not plot points. I mean, it's like his whole point.
Yeah, I agree. Except for all the times
Except that dragons are plot points.
And they're also literally
in these
covers
two.
of the book.
In these two, they are plot points.
Yeah. They're MacGuffins. Dragons are MacGuffins.
Oh, man. The dragons get a raw deal here.
Technically, they probably were having a less raw deal before because they were being left alone, except for all the ones...
Well, they were dead, so I don't know if they were having a less raw deal.
Ish.
Tortured, sure, dead-ish.
Broken, insane.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm going to cut this off before we spoiled, the best series in history. Goodbye.